Okay, we are on with Steve Wood. Steve, welcome to Lingofest. I
Pleasure to be here.
appreciate your time. I spent quite a while looking around for folks who are doing NFT stuff, but doing it from an interesting angle. And so I bumped into your LinkedIn, and I'm like, okay, this guy sounds interesting in many ways, and we'll touch on the interesting ways that I found. But before we delve into that, so as I was telling you, the audience that is watching this is mainly audio folks. So we're talking about podcasters, musicians. There are comedians who have reached out to me, folks who make their living through their voice, and who create content, and who have heard or have seen people making a lot of money out of NFTs. So so some of them are okay. It sounds like this is a way to monetize my content. Some of them is it a way to protect my content, and so on and so forth. So there are a lot of questions that that we at Witlingo, who are into audio and are launching this NFT product, are getting, right? So and I thought, okay, the best way to do this is to talk to somebody who lives in that world, who has gone a lot deeper than we have on our end, and see see if we can learn from him or her. So in your case, I want to start with the basic question of tell the world what an NFT is, and assume that the person who is listening to you has never doesn't understand even crypto, because the vast majority of people don't even understand crypto. All right. Yeah.
All right. So I've heard a lot of ways to explain what an NFT is. So to start off with, it stands for non-fungible token. So for people who are completely unfamiliar with anything in the blockchain or crypto space, most tokens and coins and whatever that you hear about are fungible tokens, like money. You know, a $1 bill is the same as another dollar bill. You can interchange them. If you put them both in the same pot, then there's really no difference between them. They're fungible. One is the same as any other. That's true with most cryptocurrencies and all tokens that run on distributed ledgers. A non-fungible token takes that concept and flips it around. So now it's no longer fungible. One token is unique. It's not equal to another one. It's not the same, and they have different properties. There can be duplicates, but by and large, one non-fungible token is completely separate from another non-fungible token. And what can a non-fungible token be? It can be literally anything. This phone could be considered a non-fungible token. These headphones could be considered a non-fungible token. This chapstick could be a non-fungible token. This cup could be a non-fungible token. Anything you can look around that is distinguishable from something else could be considered a non-fungible token. I've got two water bottles right here. The bottles themselves, non-fungible. The water inside it, fungible. You know, I can't tell any water atom from another water atom. I can tell these two bottles apart, so they are non-fungible. The same applies to non-fungible tokens with regard to fungible tokens. That's the primary difference between them. And you could apply that to pretty much anything. We can talk about non-fungibility in ways that's really irrelevant, like the water bottles, or ways that's quite relevant, such as the deed to your house or your car registration. All of that is non-fungible. And a non-fungible token is basically, either in most ways that this is currently done, is a representation of something that is non-fungible. There are ways that we can do non-fungible tokens where it actually is the non-fungible item, especially when we start talking about the metaverse and digital objects. But as of right now, most of the implementations are just representations of a non-fungible object.
Okay. So, so is this concept of non-fungible token, is this something that we can compare it to something that we already understand, in the real world? Is it like, I don't know, is it like a unique certificate ID? Let's say I have a piece of art, right? I have a piece of art. It's a painting. It's a painting. Obviously, it's an object, and that object is the painting that I painted. There's only one of them, right? Um, and I would like to make sure that people know that this is the genuine thing. It's like a certificate that I go somewhere that somebody gives me, something like an NFT.
That's absolutely one implementation of NFTs. And that's one that a company that I'm working with is doing. We're not directly doing that, but we're offering it. Wow. But we're offering, let me back up so that we can cut that out.
No, don't worry about it. Just go on, go on. It's good. It's
Okay,
good. It's good
that's
stuff.
going to happen a lot because
That's
my
okay.
Telegram makes a lot of noise.
Okay.
But yeah, so when we're talking about a non-fungible token, kind of backing up to what I was talking about in the previous answer, that is a lot of what non-fungible tokens are. They're representations of things. They can serve as a certificate of authenticity, like you were saying, a unique identifier that shows that this object is the unique object that I'm claiming it is. One suggestion that I like to give out to people who are trying to think about what an NFT is to think about those documents that register objects in your name that I mentioned in the previous answer as well, like your car registration. There's like I drive a Mazda CX-9. There's tons of them. They produce, I don't know how many thousands of them every year. They're relatively non-fungible if you think about it, because any one of those cars is pretty indistinguishable from another. Now, that said, they are each unique. They all have their own VIN numbers. They have their own unique identification numbers. And each one of those has a registration paper associated with that. You could call that registration paper the NFT of the car. And in many cases, you can NFT that registration and hold that in your crypto wallet. A crypto wallet is basically where you keep all of your digital assets that exist on a blockchain, and non-fungible tokens can be held in your wallets the same as fungible tokens can. And if you have all of these pieces of all these assets and all of these non-fungible tokens in your wallet, then you can basically show anyone who you want to that you own all of these things and this is legit, and it ties back to the actual object that it represents.
Okay, wonderful. So we're going to take baby steps. So I think we are off to a good start. So let's say I reside in the state of Virginia. Okay, and I have a license, a driver's license in the state of Virginia. And that driver's license has an ID. It's the ID of the, right? Within the state of Virginia, that ID, right, is that the equivalent of the state of Virginia being, I don't know, Ethereum or cryptocurrency, and that ID being an NFT, for example? Meaning my ID makes sense only within the state of Virginia as a driver's license. And so it has to always be against some kind of a space or a market, or in our case, perhaps a crypto network. Is that close?
I wouldn't necessarily say that that's 100% accurate. Now, yeah, your unique ID on your Virginia driver's license would be the specific unique identifier of the NFT that comes to you. And that would identify it as a driver's license, as well as being affiliated with you. And it would also have all the records associated with it that say, I see you're wearing glasses, so you probably have an endorsement on your license that says you have to have corrected vision. So it would have all of those various, we call them metadata, associated with that NFT, which is basically just information embedded into the NFT file that gives a little bit more information about the NFT.
Yeah.
Now, the state of Virginia wouldn't necessarily be what I would call the blockchain. I would say that the state of Virginia would be the issuer, the minter of the NFT. What is it in Virginia? The Bureau, the Department
BMV.
of BMV. Yeah, they would be the individual entity that minted your NFT, in this case, your driver's license, and then they sold it to you for however much, like $20, whatever the fee was to get it, and required you to take your test. And the blockchain then, I guess, in this specific instance, would just be the real world. like all of physical reality, because that NFT, your driver's license, sits in the physical universe. You know, you
Mhm.
can transfer it to any single person in the universe. Now that won't
Mhm.
necessarily be recognized because it's a government document that's issued specifically to you.
Yep. Yep.
In fact, I would actually call your driver's license an NTFT, a non-transferable non-fungible token.
Yeah.
That's now we're getting into a little bit more
No, that's
complex.
fine. Um, uh, so before I lose the thought, I'm trying to because that representation, a series of digits, right? It's all it is, a series of digits that basically points to metadata, which is the things that you said, right? Name and all that. But that sequence of digits, which is my driver's license, if somebody else has that exact sequence of digits as a driver's license in Michigan, right? So those are two different entities, and I'm trying to understand: is the state of Virginia, meaning the place where this thing has meaning, the driver's license sequence of digits has meaning. So it's looked up in a database. The database is the Virginia database, and only within that space that thing makes sense, right? And so I'm trying to liken it to when I issue an NFT. That NFT is against a chain block, right? Like Ethereum, where I could have it against some other, and there are several of them. And my NFT within Ethereum, does it make sense to does it have currency in other blockchains, or is it only within Ethereum blockchain?
There are cross-chain bridges that allow you to move objects, usually fungible tokens, from one ledger to another. Uh, in reality, you're not actually moving them between the ledger. The
Mhm.
object exists on both and is frozen in one and unlocked in
I
another.
see. I see.
So you can do that, but that's almost entirely done with fungible tokens. If there are
Mm, mm,
mechanisms for transferring a
mm,
non-fungible token from one ledger to another, I'm not too familiar with them. Now, that said, there are some functions that are coming online to do this. So, we've got Ethereum, which is the most popular blockchain for NFTs right now. Polygon is another blockchain that does a lot of NFTs, and it sits on top of Ethereum. It's what we call a layer 2 solution, whereas Ethereum is a layer 1. So Polygon can host NFTs that were minted on Ethereum. So in some cases, yes, you can send an NFT from one blockchain to another, but only in very specific instances. I can't take an Ethereum NFT and send it to
mhm,
Cardano.
mhm.
There's no interoperability there, at least not yet. As of this recording, that
Sure,
may
sure.
change.
Yeah, yeah,
But
makes
yeah,
sense. Yeah.
and as to Virginia versus, say, Michigan, like you were saying,
Mhm.
that would be, different. You could have the same information on every single piece of metadata that each one of those
Yeah.
entities mints. It would be distinguishable. It would still be non-fungible because you would see that it was a different entity that minted it as
Mm,
a part of a
mm.
different collection. You would
I
have the
see.
Michigan NFT collection that was the driver's license for Michigan. You'd have the Virginia NFT collection that was the driver's licenses for Virginia. And anyone who looks at the metadata, even if all the other information was the same, would be able to see that they were two completely distinct objects because they were minted by different organizations as part of a different collection.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Okay. I think sorry, I went with the driver's license because that's the first thing that occurred to my mind. Maybe a better thing would be a deed to my house, right? Because in that case, I can sell it, which is closer to how the NFT world works, right? So in that case, my house, my deed, I mean, who issues the deed? Is it the city? I don't know, city
It
government?
varies.
It varies, right?
Yeah.
Let's say it's the city government that issues the deed, and it's registered in the city government, and that's the official keeper. And therefore, and there is the concept of owning, right? Owning the deed, and then selling the deed when we transfer, I guess, the property, right? So within that world, I think that's getting closer. Perhaps that metaphor is perhaps closer, right, to the way
Yeah.
NFTs work. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be a better metaphor because, like we were talking about with driver's licenses, they're not really transferable.
Right.
But yeah, as far as the deed to a house goes, That's a perfect example. And I really like using that example because in my personal actual life, this would have solved a problem. So when I like to tell this little anecdote to give people an idea of how NFTs can solve real world issues.
Perfect.
So when, let's back up a second. My
Yep.
parents flipped a house and they bought this house. It was like 6 or 7 years ago now. I can't remember. It took them a really long time to flip the house. It was in complete disrepair. Basically, the entire thing needed to be gutted and rebuilt from the studs. And it took like 4 years or so to renovate this house. And it only finished about 2 years ago. In that time period, the neighbor's house sold. Now, the house that I'm talking about that my parents flipped used to be part of the same property. It was all one big lot.
Mm.
And when my parents bought the house to flip, they split it off.
Mm-hmm.
However, when the neighbor's house sold, the government sold that house as well.
Oh.
They transferred the name of both properties into the new person's name.
Wow.
Nobody knew this until my parents finished flipping the house and went to go, actually do something with it. And they saw that, oh, we no longer own this house.
Wow.
How did that happen? We didn't sell it. What happened was the old property record was just changed. It didn't get updated in all the systems. So when one house sold, they sold the entire old parcel. With a blockchain and an NFT of these properties, that could not possibly have happened because as soon as it splits off, when they split off the property, those are now completely separate. Each one has its own NFT. And since I own the keys to that NFT, I own it in my wallet. It's not being maintained by a government office somewhere. There's no possibility for that to flip to a new person. When the other house sold, I would have retained the NFT to my deed for my house, or in this case, my parents. And there's no way that the government could have reached in and grabbed that NFT and also given it to the new owner of the other house.
Okay, makes sense. So it's just so that I understand exactly what happened. Your parents bought the house. They were given the deed for the house. But it so happened that there was a deed for the whole lot, right? And then somebody bought that lot and they bought the house as well. And what you're saying is because you had bought that house and you had the deed, if it was on the NFT block, you would have, there was no way for anyone to grab it because you own it.
Right. So I'll just do a visual example here.
Yes.
So this is a note card, obviously. Let's say this represents the entire lot. There was a house here, and then there was another house here. My parents bought this house, and in the process, split the lot. The government didn't register this. When they sold this one, they packaged them both back together and gave them both to the new owner. Right. Whereas if this was a blockchain, this is an irreparable split. You can't put this back together.
Yep.
I would still have had this. This other house would have sold, and my parents would have retained this one. And this is going into my wallet. It's my deed now. And that's basically what they ended up having to do. They had to go down to the government with their physical deed and show, hey, you screwed this up. But in a blockchain with NFTs, none of that would have been necessary. And they wouldn't have had to spend all this time and hassle trying to correct this. And imagine if they had figured this out in the contract phase, during the due diligence process of selling, the sale would have fallen through. So there's a lot of ways that NFTs can solve these problems if they're properly applied.
Yeah. And so just so that we so that the drama, so where is the situation with your parents? Are they able to retain their house? Are they in court?
Yeah, they got it back. It took like 6 months of lobbying the local government, but they did get everything corrected.
Okay, and then the owner of the other house didn't make any claims saying, hey.
No, that they didn't even know. Like
they didn't even know.
No, that no one told them that they ended up buying 2 houses according to the government. And thankfully for my parents, no one mentioned that to them because
okay. That could have been
as well.
If you had not a very nice person or greedy person, they could have created this.
I'm sure they're nice people, but yeah, if they wanted a better deal, then they could have doubled their money.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Okay, so that's one problem that it solves, right? Clearly, it's a real I'm sure this is not a unique thing that happens.
No, I'm
It happens
sure that
only. It happens
there's
all.
plenty of other
Yeah.
examples. That's just the one that sits at the forefront of my mind because it
Yeah.
really impacted my family at a personal level.
Yeah. Okay. So, continuing with the metaphor, the minter in this case is the local government, right? The
Yep.
one that issues the deeds, and they are responsible in terms of issuing or transferring. It's a central entity, right? That central entity, as such, doesn't exist really, which is I think the beauty is the distributed aspect of crypto. There's no one authority. So describe to us we understand what issuing a deed means in the real world, but it goes to the office, applies, and so on. There's a process, bureaucracy. There are signatures by duly elected or appointed officials, and it's a thing that can stand in a court of law, right? Boom. Um, what is the equivalent of that in the world of crypto? I mean, who is the issuer? What authority do they have? When there is dispute, is there a dispute? Maybe you can sort of tease out the similarities and differences between the two.
Sure. So obviously, the person who mints it, as far as the deeds, is going to be the government, as we mentioned. If we were doing an NFT, that would probably still be the government that minted the original NFT. But after that, they're pretty much done. After they've gone through the whole process to create the NFT and say, this is the NFT that represents this property, at that point, it's out of their hands. Like, the government no longer really would have a say in maintaining the property records. That would be entirely owned by me. And usually right now in the real world, you have a copy of your deed. The master sits in the government records office. And if you have to make a change, then you have to go down to the government and get them to change the master. And then they issue a new deed that goes out after all the contracts are signed that finalize the change.
Mhm.
The government's the one that actually records all of that. But in an NFT, that wouldn't necessarily need to happen. There is no, as you mentioned, there is no centralized authority that has to act as the government does in this specific instance. You sell it, you hand it over, and then you take your payment. Now, yes, you don't just want to hand it to them and trust that they're going to pay you, because that presents a whole lot of risk. There's a whole lot of services out there that will mitigate that risk. And the biggest ones are generally sought after as exchanges. Like, the biggest one I can think of right now is OpenSea. They're the most popular NFT exchange. What people do is they, as with any auction house, you list your product, people go and bid on it, and then the highest bidder gets the product and you get your money, and then they take their cut.
Mhm.
So that would be the equivalent of sitting down with someone and negotiating and trying to figure out what price you want to sell and on what terms, and then signing all the papers once you've come to an agreement and exchanging properties. Except now you don't have to go to this third party and get them to record everything and approve it and stamp it and take their cut. OpenSea would take their cut, but you don't have to go through them if you don't want to. There's nothing stopping you as an individual from creating your own, we call them smart contracts, that would basically act as an escrow service. And the way things work with most physical transfers of very large valued items, you have an escrow service that in many cases is the government that holds the money and the deed, makes sure everything is signed and approved and on the up and up, and then exchanges the service. As a decentralized platform, anyone can go and start their own escrow service, and it's pretty cheap. Like, I could probably knock one out for a few $100, maybe $1,000 if I wanted a really high-end complicated one. It was just a simple smart contract that said, okay, this is the NFT, the item, here's the money, locking them both up in this smart contract. As soon as I get an approval from both parties, we call that signing a transaction, that everything is on the up and up, they switch. Okay, the NFT goes here, the money goes here. That's what OpenSea does. It's a really simple contract. It's just that they also have a massive UI and a huge following, a massive user interface that's relatively easy to use for most people. I disagree in a lot of cases, and that's one of the things my company's trying to do, is help with that problem, one of my companies. And they facilitate the transaction. But you don't need that. That's just something that people like to use because a lot of people are still comfortable with having some sort of centralized authority that manages the process and assumes a lot of the risk.
Makes sense. Okay. And we'll get to to talk about your companies shortly. Um, but let me take a step back because we have we're using an example where there's the government in the middle, and just want to make sure people understand that government in the middle here is a byproduct of the use case, right? That it's a deed, right? And let's talk now. Maybe we can talk about the use case of somebody who has I don't know. Let's look at this one because I'm getting a lot of interesting pings from comedians. They want to NFT the opening joke of their routine. All right, like a minute or 2 minutes, right? And since they tour, they have a version of it, so to speak, in New York when they open in New York, and it's recorded in New York, and another one when they are in Detroit, and another one, so on and so forth, right? So you can see where we're going with this idea, all right? So there's a minute. They meant, let's say, they meant five versions of that minute or five NFTs, and they put it in the marketplace, right? In that case, uh, is there an equivalent to the government, or is the blockchain sort of the mediator or the holder? Walk us through that particular use case, and how everything sort of works together in enabling these folks to create these NFTs and put them in the market and sell them, or maybe create collections. Let's see how far we can go with that use case.
Sure. So in that case, the blockchain would not necessarily be taking the role of the government. I would say the blockchain would be taking the role of the internet. So let's say that you're doing that, you're minting these NFTs, but let's get rid of that whole idea at first. And let's say if you're not going to do it as an NFT, what you're trying to do in this case is basically sell an MP3, right?
Yeah.
If you're doing it on your website, you're trying to get people to pay to either listen to or download this MP3 file of the 1 minute that you're trying to get people to hear.
Mm-hmm.
The internet is the facilitating protocol, the infrastructure that's just making sure that you are able to take payment and they are able to receive what they've paid for.
Mm-hmm.
In this case, the blockchain, which is basically another layer of the internet, is effectively serving as that infrastructure to make sure that you are able to deliver your good and take your payment.
Mm-hmm.
And the NFT is the representation of the file. The difference here is that you don't have to have this file on like a server that you have maintained. So if you're trying to sell that, you've got to build a website, right? You've got to have a server where you're hosting it. Probably you're going to use Amazon Web Services or some similar service to host all of the files that you're trying to sell. Similarly, you've got a contract with some payment processor to be able to take the payment. But if you're doing this with an NFT, then you don't need any of that. You just need a wallet. You can do all the other stuff. You can still build a website if you want, probably advisable. And list your NFTs either on your website for sale or on an auction platform and take the payment directly in cryptocurrency that goes directly to your wallet without needing a payment processor. The blockchain also serves as the payment processor in addition to the internet. Blockchain really is basically the internet with a payment layer built into it. That's pretty much what blockchain is. You could also call it a glorified Excel spreadsheet. I know a lot of people that do that too. But in this case, what you're doing with the NFTs, minting each different version of them and then selling them to people who want to have that copy of that audio file, they're just holding it in their wallet without needing a centralized server somewhere to hold it. It's stored on the blockchain. In theory, as far as I'm aware, there's only one blockchain that actually works that way, and that's BSV, Bitcoin Satoshi Vision. Most NFTs on other blockchains point to a file somewhere else.
Yeah.
So the idea is that you really are trying to minimize the amount of data that you're writing to the blockchain, because like I said, it's a glorified Excel spreadsheet. When you're moving an NFT from one wallet to another, you're updating a cell in an Excel spreadsheet. That's the simplest analogy. It's not entirely accurate, but it's a pretty simple analogy that gets the idea across. And you don't want to have to move that much data, because the more data you move, the more you're going to have to pay to move it. That's the payment layer aspect of it. You're paying to update this decentralized, huge Excel spreadsheet that's being maintained by millions of people all over the world, and they need to be paid for their services. That's the whole reason for transaction fees on a blockchain. So you want to minimize that, to minimize the fee that you're having to pay. So most NFTs are mostly a link that point to some centralized server somewhere that then that file can change. So that is a big risk. And I don't know if you're familiar with Signal. It's a secure messaging app. The founder of Signal did this experiment where he was showing that in a lot of cases, NFTs can be pretty risky and scammy, because if that file on the back end changes, then the NFT that you bought is no longer what you bought. So what he did was he sold an NFT that was like, I don't remember exactly what it was, but after it was bought, he updated the file on the back end, so it was just a poop emoji.
Yeah.
So,
right. Yep.
So yeah, the person didn't get what they paid for, right? I mean, that was the whole point. I'm pretty sure he refunded the guy. He wasn't trying to scam him, but that was just kind of what he's trying to do, to show that. And on Bitcoin Satoshi Vision, I don't think that that's the case, because all the information is embedded into the NFT, because their block sizes are so big, they can afford to do that, and the transaction fees are so low.
Okay, wonderful. So let's say I am a very famous comedian. Okay, really famous. Let's say, but I started issuing these NFTs before I became famous. Okay, um, and and people were, let's say I had fans and they believed in me and they said this guy is going somewhere, and they paid a couple of $100 for the NFTs. All of a sudden I have a Netflix special and it become this sensation, right? Now these guys have something that has increased in value, I'm assuming, right?
Oh yeah.
Right. And I'm just trying to get to the point of, and you tell me if I'm right or wrong. The point that actually I own something that was owned by this person who is now very, very famous, right? And here is the certificate in the blockchain, and it really doesn't matter what's behind it, whether it's an audio or whatever it may be. It's the fact that I have this ownership. It's the certificate of ownership, and I think that's the value of the thing, right? I think, right? Am I understanding it, or am I missing something there?
Well, you're right, and that is correct, but there's also more to it. Like, yes, there's the whole digital provenance aspect, where this NFT, though, let's say you're buying an NFT of me drinking a bottle of water, and then I become the most famous person in cryptocurrency. I'm the next Vitalik, and then you buy that NFT of me drinking that water bottle, simply by it's kind of useless because it's just me drinking a water bottle, right? But simply by the fact that I owned that, and that can be proven because all the movements of these NFTs are tracked on the blockchain. You can trace it all the way back to the moment it was minted. You can see every wallet that it passed through. You can prove that I owned that, and now you own that.
Yeah.
So now you own a piece of the new Vitalik's history. So yes, it has value in that respect. There's also additional value. So say, we're minting these NFTs of something that is relatively unique, not drinking a water bottle, but maybe the first time a comedian ever went out and gave, on an open mic night.
Yeah.
So you had someone there who had, you had a buddy who was at your first open mic night recording everything that you said. And, you can hear all the audience laughing in the background. And then you NFT that and you just hold it, or you sell it. And someone who really believes in you buys it, maybe $10, because it's just an MP3, right? And then simply, even if the person who did that, the comedian, never actually owned that NFT, if it was just their business manager or a friend who recorded that and did that, then that still gets a whole lot more valuable when you blow up. It's like having a signed Mickey Mantle baseball card from his rookie year. Baseball cards are kind of out right now, but the analogy holds. If you've got a Ken Griffey Jr. or something that was signed by Ken Griffey Jr. his rookie year in baseball, and then all of a sudden he's one of the most famous hitters in baseball history, even though he never owned that NFT or that baseball card, it's still got a lot of value now.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you clarified that. But what I'm trying to get at is the stuff around the thing. Like a lot of art dealers, right? They buy the art, they never look at it, They don't care, right? And they store it and then just deal. So it's a black box as far as they're concerned. The only thing that matters is the fact that there's an authority that says this thing is very worth a lot. I don't care really what's inside. Could be a poop. Who cares, right? It's the fact that an authority has said this is, or the market basically, the market is saying this is worth a lot. And so as long as I hold on to it and things happen and hopefully it appreciates, I can sell that black box, and I don't care what's inside of it, right? And so I think that's one of the things that I'm trying to sort of understand fully is there's nothing. I mean, the digital aspect of it is distracting, right? It's the fact that it's unique, or there are very few of them, and it can it can be it can verifiably be declared as unique, right? It's a thing that is unique, that is associated with this person. It could be that they issued it, or it could be that they or it's about them at a certain point in time, and so on and so forth. Like for example, I heard that you can actually NFT a moment, a moment, right? Or you can NFT the birth of your child, the sound of them crying when they just come out, right? You can NFT it, and you can say, I know that my child is going to become a legend, right? So I will gift this to them, and at some point in time, it will be an asset that they can sell in a world where all of that becomes commonplace, right? So I think let's go back. If we go back to the very beginning, as what you said, which is the non-fungibility of it is the key thing, right? The fact that it's capturing uniqueness in a digital world where uniqueness, it's hard to capture, right? Like you were showing, these are things that exist in space and time. There's no way, even the most exact replica of it is still a separate thing. Right. But in bits and bytes, right, zeros and ones, you can have the exact sequence of zeros and ones. And so how do you say that this one is different from this one when actually this sequence of zeros and ones happened to be time stamped at a certain point in time, which was when the guy delivered that a monologue for the very first time. All right. And so here it's an NFT for it. So I think I'm still trying to make sure that I understand it in a way that hopefully I can explain it to someone without getting them confused very quickly, because that's what happens to me. As soon as I start to, I don't know, this NFT thing is, as soon as I start explaining it, it's in my head. It's hard, right? I think it's hard to, because there are concepts that are missing perhaps.
I mean, yeah, there's a whole lot of additional information that goes into it, because it's really technical. Like I can get into the whole like nonces and like hashes, and and ways that you can validate the blocks to prove that no two things are exactly the same. Especially when we're talking about non-fungible tokens, there's a whole lot more that goes into it, right? But as far as trying to talk to someone who doesn't have a whole lot of basic knowledge of crypto, that's way too much. Like no one needs to know how a block is minted, and how the difference between proof of work and proof of stake to validate individual transactions to prove how everything is being transacted and is not being committed, and there's no fraud being committed. And sometimes people do try to commit fraud, like you're saying, and do an exact replica of this or double spend money, and those those are always caught, because there's millions of people running these validation nodes all over the world. It always gets caught. Anytime someone's tried to do something like that, it's been rolled back, or it's been fixed.
And that's a huge advantage, right? Because it's very hard to do in real life, right? People have fake licenses all the time, right? You can't do that or a fake deed. You can't do that in the world of crypto.
I mean, you can try, but you will be caught.
But you'll be caught, because there's algorithms out there that are, or software out there, that's trying to find these things. Okay.
Not to say that there is not fraud and scams in the space. Like, don't get me wrong. There's a ton of those, but most of that does not come from someone trying to imitate object A and say this is object A, when it's really something slightly different that I'm trying to rip off. And there are people who don't do any due diligence. If you're trying to, if I've got a Bored Ape, for example, like everybody talks about Bored Apes now, they're the biggest thing in NFTs. So if I've got a Bored Ape and someone like right clicks and saves and then mints that same Bored Ape as an NFT and tries to sell it, and I don't do my due diligence, and I'm like, oh yeah, another Bored Ape, I'm going to buy that. and oh, I just got scammed. That happens, and
Yeah.
that's something that and we'll get into this, but that's something my company is trying to eliminate. But that is a thing out there, and right now you got to be careful about that kind of stuff. And there are also scams where the biggest one is the giveaway scam. Send me an Ethereum and I'll send you 2, 3, however many X back because I'm doing this giveaway program and I just need you to validate your wallet by sending me some tokens. And that's always a scam. Never buy, never go for that.
Well, let's go ahead and dive deep into. I think you have two companies that I see here, NFTY token, right?
I got a couple, yeah.
Okay, and then VLBO. How do you say that? VLBO? Vilbo.
It's Vilbo, and that one's kind of on the back burner. It's related to NFTY, and NFTY is a token, and VLBO is an auction house. And we were building them both at the same time. We've decided for multiple reasons to shift almost all of our focus onto the token, onto NFTY, because that's the real problem solving aspect. And once we get that completely nailed down, then we'll go back and focus on the auction house again.
Okay.
But
well, tell me what is the set of problems you guys are solving with NFTY?
So I did just mention the whole fraud issue, and that's one of the big issues that we're solving with this. The other one is discoverability. So, like you were saying, let's say you're a famous comedian and you're minting all of these opening jokes and selling them as NFTs. How do you get seen? The way that it works right now, you think you list it and there's people that are going to find it, right? Well, in reality, you have to bring your own buyers. You have to pump your own product. If you don't already have people who are interested in what you're doing that you've cultivated elsewhere on the internet, whether you've got a big Instagram following or whether you have a big room on Clubhouse that you can direct people over to your auction, that's not gonna sell. Even if you're really famous, you still have to put in the work. The way that it's currently done, it's just some algorithms that determine what gets floated up to the top. And these algorithms don't really have a lot of subjective analytical skills. They're robots, right? It's pure emotionless code. So they can only do filters by things like newest, highest priced, most activity. So, if I'm Dave Chappelle and I have, millions of followers on social media and I mint an NFT and I say to all my followers, go to this, it'll get seen because I'm Dave Chappelle and I'm driving millions of people to OpenSea to look at it. So it'll filter up to the top of the most popular. But let's say I'm not that famous. I'm just famous in my sector. I don't have my own Netflix show. Maybe I can't drive the kind of traffic that like Beeple or Banksy would be able to drive to OpenSea. So the only way that it's going to be seen is on the new category. And then things get minted all the time and listed on OpenSea. So it disappears pretty quick off that new category. Right. So at that point, my stuff just kind of disappears. I don't get seen. And we've heard this from a lot of people who are trying to sell their NFTs, that the discoverability issue is almost insurmountable if you don't already have a huge audience to drive to your platform. So what our product is doing, it's more of a service than a product, is it's creating a new layer of individuals between the buyers and the sellers. We're calling them the advocates. So those advocates, they're basically your paid advocates. They're your paid endorsers. You're paying them. And
who am I?
You as an NFT seller are paying them. I'll explain how.
Yep.
But this is a good thing because it makes sure that the people are financially incentivized to do their job and make sure that your stuff is pushed out there. So the way it works is I'm an advocate. I buy some NFTY tokens and I stake them into our smart contract. That gives me advocacy power. Each token gives me a little bit more power to advocate on behalf of auctions. When I see new auctions go up, and I could do this every day, I could sit at home, instead of like browsing Twitter or Netflix or Zillow or whatever, I can open up our app and go through and say, okay, this NFT looks good, and then do my research. I'll basically get advance notice of NFTs before they go up for sale. And then I'll do my research to determine if this person is legit. is this a scam? You know, if I see a Bored Ape going up on here, I'm like, okay, well, almost all the Bored Apes, you know, I know I'm in the space, so I would know this. Our advocates are in the space, and this is the kind of stuff they would know. Like, okay, well, this looks like a scam. Do my research. Okay, it's a scam. I'm not gonna, you know, screw that one. And oh, this one, you know, this is a very unique piece. This one's got, you know, it's someone's first edition of, you know, the first time they ever went up on open mic night. You know, there's maybe, this is like a 1 of 10, and there will never be more than 10. So yeah, I'll endorse that one. So by endorsing that one, it moves up in the priority list of what gets shown on these exchanges, on the NFT exchanges. So it solves the discoverability issue by elevating the new, unique, actual high quality works. So, you know, if I've created a massive sculpture and I want to sell that next to a board, next to like a Pepe picture, you know, like the meme, oftentimes simply because memes get a lot of traffic, that's going to be more visible.
Yeah.
But with the NFTY protocol, that flips. Now, our endorsers aren't going to endorse a meme, a Pepe meme or something. They're going to endorse the Monet. They're going to endorse the David statue. It's going to be much higher visibility than the stuff that people just like go copy paste off of Google Images, or, you know, some like sound that someone just, you know, if I just went outside and recorded the trains driving by, you know, that's not going to filter up to the top because no one's going to endorse that. But by endorsing the good stuff, the advocates are helping the creators get their products seen by a lot more people on these exchanges, and they're rewarded for doing so. Their reward is 7.5% of the total sale price, and that's distributed amongst all the advocators in proportion to how much they advocated. So they're paid. And what we've been finding is that, at least from our initial research, we're about to deploy all this protocols. We've been doing the testing and such. And on February 1st is when we're doing our like open beta, that's what we're calling it. We've found that a lot of times with the visibility that these advocates provide increases the sale price far more than they're getting paid. So if I have like $1,000 and $1,000 thing that would have sold for $1,000, by now it being more visible, it sells for like $2,000. So even though you're losing an additional 7.5% to pay these endorsers, these advocates, but you're making a lot more than that.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. All right. So let me see if I can understand. I heard this for the first time. So let's see if I grasp the proposition, the value proposition. Currently, the problem is let's say I'm a legit comedian, really. All right. I have an audience, so on.
For real.
For real, right? I make people laugh and so forth, and they follow me, and I have 10K followers, right? So decent enough, right? And I'm young, and I have a career in front of me, and so on. And I meant 5 of these, right? And they are interesting, right? In the sense that each one of them is 1 minute in a city, right? And I put it in OpenSea, right? And let's say you can tell who I am, maybe my Twitter account. You can check me out. You can sort of vet me, social proof me, and so forth, right? And so I'm there. I mint it for 5 seconds. It's there in the new, and it disappears because there's a sea of. It's an open sea, right? It's a sea of,
exactly. It's an open sea.
It's open sea. It's exactly. It describes the problem you're trying to solve, I think, right? It's an ocean basically of NFTs, and since OpenSea makes its money through these transactions, obviously they're motivated to elevate the ones that are going to sell a lot of money, and sort of a vicious circle in a way. I don't know if it's a vicious circle, but it's the model is such that it does not help the legit guy, right? So you're introducing, in essence, I'm going to say it in my own words. It's probably going to sound jarring to you, but just bear with me as I try to sort of articulate it. Sort of you have folks who are, I don't know, people who are evaluating stuff out there and finding it and saying this is good. Let me elevate, let me vote for it, so to speak. And I'm doing that because it's something that somebody will find interesting because the person somebody's going somewhere, or the content is is interesting, right? There's something interesting about it. It's, the guy who is going around and using your app would ignore something that looks bullshitty, right?
Right.
Because it is bullshitty, and I don't want to waste my time with stuff. So I upvote it, sort of, right? Upvote it in a way.
Yep.
And then I put it up, and initially, who sees it? Is it the community of the NFTY folks, or who will also say, hey, that's pretty good stuff. Let me also help you with the, upvoting it. Because if I find something pretty unique, I'm the only guy within your community who found it, all right, and I upvoted. I need more than that. Like, I need critical mass. But let me continue, and I'll be done shortly. So I upvoted, and let's say enough people say good things about this my NFT. All right. How does that bubble up into, say, OpenSea? How does that get into noticed by OpenSea, for example? Because that's ultimately that's where I want my thing to, right?
Right. So there's two things there. So yeah, you've got you got the idea pretty accurate, that's more or less
Okay.
how it works. And a simple analogy would be like to Reddit, where on Reddit you get upvotes, downvotes, you got karma that people accrue, the advocators accrue, and then you can give various posts awards, gold, whatever.
Okay.
That's kind of how this works. And
Okay.
if I'm a brand new advocate and I have this track record that's horrible, the other advocates are gonna see that. So if I'm just going in there and trying to like upvote scams, people are going to know that, and they're never going to promote. Nobody else is going to upvote it if I can see that there's a scammer basically who's trying to upvote it. So that eliminates that problem. But
yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay, and we're working on. So right now, I mentioned that we're about to do the tech launch, like the open beta, and we have, for example, with OpenSea. OpenSea is going to be a little more difficult, but we do have a direct connection to the founders of OpenSea, and we're working on getting a true integration into that, so that we'll add like I don't know exactly what we'll call it, maybe like a trending or like hot items, something like that, so that when you are looking at the new, popular, most expensive, you'll have an additional tab, and that'll show you all the things that our advocates have and basically endorsed. And we've got other partnerships with a bunch of smaller NFT exchanges. And because there's I swear, there's a new NFT exchange going live like every 2 or 3 days at this point. And they all need something to help them differentiate themselves as well. They're really interested in integrating the protocol that we're building. I have a friend who's launching he does launch services, like space launch services. He's a payload provider, and they have NFTs that they're trying to list on their exchange that represent the items that are going into space. And they have that's kind of cool, right? But now, who determines what's a good thing going into space?
Yeah.
Well, we'll have advocators who are specifically dedicated to that particular type of auction that will be able to upvote those. So it solves that problem by basically decentralizing the whole thing and bringing it down to like an individual level with, like I said, the Reddit analogy. So eventually, on any time you go to any NFT exchange, you'll be able to see the things that have been verified by our community.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Hopefully it won't stop us. Can you give me another 5 to 10 minutes if possible?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I got a couple. My family's not back yet, so we still
okay.
got some
Well,
time.
when they come back, we'll stop it.
That'll be my hard stop. I don't know when
there
it
you
is.
go. There you go. Yeah, exactly. We all need hard stops. Okay. Excellent. So this is very interesting. So here, because so you said these exchanges are emerging every 2 days or so, right? Which is interesting. Means that there's a lot of activity out there. People are investing time and money and so on to create these communities. As you were talking, I was thinking about what we are at Witlingo, and I know I didn't plan to talk about us, but I think it might help folks understand. So what we do is we help folks create audio. We host audio for them. We enable them to transcribe the audio. We do a lot. We're all about audio, right? Publish audio as microcasts, and so on and so forth. And minting audio is going to be one of the features, right? So you can go to you log into your account, you have a bunch of audios, you just click on a button, it takes you to your wallet, right? We have a smart contract, we mint it for you. And then I think out of the box, we put it in Rarible. We just chose one platform, Rarible, right? And so now you have something in the blockchain. It has you have an NFT, against your audio, and you can go and obviously put it wherever you want. Now, since we're focused on audio, right? How would we use you, just so that I understand more? How would we, in this case, use you guys to help our customers? Because they have issued an NFC. How will people, how will it bubble up? And obviously, that's the problem you're solving. So, walk me through, how would a company like myself engage with you to integrate, so to speak, right? Enable us to make use of what you guys are offering.
So based on what I just heard your spin, I'm just coming up. I know a little bit about what Witlingo does,
Sure.
but now that I'm hearing about this, the thing that I have formulating in my head here is more of a like integration partnership. So what we would do is you're minting these NFTs, right? And once
Mhm.
you know that they're going to be on Rarible, then you would I guess we would just build an API or something so that we would have a steady stream from your
Mhm.
server that tells us that the data
Mhm.
of the NFTs that you've just minted or that you're going to be minting and listing, and we
Mhm.
would create on our back end for our advocates a page for that so that
Mhm.
we can we'll create a broad category, audio NFTs,
Mhm.
and then people who are interested in the audio NFTs would just flip over to that tab and they'd see all of the data coming in. And so every time you mint one, it would just boop, add another
Mhm.
box to the beginning of the UI. And someone could then, hopefully they're not like hours long because that would be difficult for someone to listen to the whole thing. But we would have all the information from the creator, not you, but the actual
Yep.
creative who
Mhm. Mhm.
recorded the audio,
Yep.
and like what was we were anticipating the
Yep.
sale price to be, the opening auction, if there's a reserve price, anything that they've sold in the past. So we would tie all that together for our advocates so that they could go and give it a good stamp up, hopefully not down, because
Yep.
everything that's going to be coming from you guys is almost certainly not a scam. So I think that it
Yeah.
would
Yeah.
probably get a lot of support from our community, and then that would increase the visibility on Rarible.
Yeah.
We would have to integrate fully with Rarible in order for that to happen. We're starting with
Okay.
OpenSea,
OpenSea.
but
Yeah. No, that makes sense. So in a way, the more of let's say Witlingo, who places its brand behind these guys. So I mean, we can't allow folks who are scammers to be part of our system,
right,
right? So there is that layer of filtering, and then there's your layer of filtering. You're not going to integrate with just anyone, right? So
right.
by the time you get a stamp, by the time the NFT gets a stamp, it has gotten validation, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when somebody sees it in OpenSea, do they see that it was? I guess. Hang on. Do they see a trace of the upvoting from you guys,
We
or
have
is it?
to. We haven't built that integration yet. We're
Mhm.
still, we haven't. We're still finishing up all the tech. But yes, that will be how we integrate it. Like, not only will you see like all this traditional stats that you see for the auction, but you'll also see the record of the advocates. So you'll be able to go back and see all, if you want to, you
Yeah.
can do your tracing to see, this person only endorses good stuff, and they're a diamond level, someone who always endorses really good stuff and has a lot of advocacy power. So they'll be able
Interesting.
to see various levels of upvoting or downvoting on a given NFT. Of course, you probably won't even see the downvoted stuff because it'll be all the way at the bottom, but
Right. Right.
all the good stuff you'll be able to verify if you want that,
Mhm.
yes, this is good. But people tend to be lazy, so they'll probably just see, this is very well upvoted, so I'll go with that. Like, has anybody ever dug through and seen how many up versus down votes a post on Reddit gets? It happens, but most people just like, oh, that's got like 5 million up votes.
No. No.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna
Yeah.
open
Exactly.
up
Yeah.
that one. Yeah,
Yeah. And usually, like it's a phenomenon of human nature, I guess, is doesn't matter what you, for example, on YouTube, it doesn't matter what you post. You can post a very cute baby and there'll be a couple of downvotes, right? There are
yeah.
some cruel human beings out there.
There's always gonna be haters.
That's the word, haters. But if you see like really a lot of up, right, means something. And so would your brand appear in the, maybe at some point, let's say your brand, meaning NFTY becomes like, hey, this is NFTY approved, so to speak. Would that be part
Well,
of the eventually?
we not necessarily the NFTY.
I
It
know.
would, like, we're
Yeah,
just the protocol. That's like
I
saying, this
understand.
is
Yeah.
Bitcoin approved. Like, Bitcoin doesn't approve things, but the people who use Bitcoin do. So yeah, it would be that, you would see that this had so much activity on the NFTY protocol, but you
Yes.
wouldn't see that we approve it because, we're just facilitating the process.
But you are also sort of ensuring that the folks who are joining your network are not losers, scammers, right?
Fraudulent, yeah,
Right,
and
right. So there's
yes,
value there.
it's mostly community driven, but yes,
Hmm.
we do have moderation protocols in place so that if we can see that someone is basically trying to take advantage of the system, we can delist it.
Right. So you're introducing a level of legitimacy there, right? That is in and of itself of value. Obviously, it's an emerging value from the fact that you have good folks and so on. But there is a layer of protocol there where you can kick people out, so that let's say in a couple of years when you guys are very famous, and it means something that something was upvoted in the NFTY community, that would be, hey, as soon as I see a lot of upvote from where NFTY, okay, well that's good stuff. I'm going to invest in it as opposed to something that, yeah, okay. Now I understand. Makes a lot of sense actually. Interesting, very interesting. Sort of a value. You're trying to solve the problem of bullshit out there, right? Of fraudulence and
We're trying to quantify
Mm.
subjective value.
Exactly. Okay. Very good. Very good. Very good. Very well said. Very well said. And then I see that you have, if you want to talk about masscrypto.io, what is that?
Mass Crypto is more of a that's just an accelerator program. So that's
Mhm.
actually that was this project NFTY came out of that.
I see.
It was we had some clients who they wanted to do an OpenSea competitor. That was what VLBO. They wanted to do another NFT exchange, and we steered them away from that. And we should do this because one of the Mass Crypto founders, he's a brilliant man. He came up with this whole concept of the advocacy protocol. Yeah. And we we negotiated this with our clients, and they're like, this is new. This is something that's never been done. We could be yet another fish in a massive sea, massive open sea, or we could do something unique that can apply to all of these various exchanges that keep coming online every day. Like we kept like, we could do the exchange and we have a good value proposition for the exchange, but it requires having something niche and unique that can apply across the entire sector of NFT transactions. Mm-hmm. And that's what NFTY can do. So we got everybody to get on board with the token side and building up the reputation layer before we start trying to do something with the exchange. And that was Mass Crypto's main project, and it's we've been focusing on that pretty heavily. I've got like a lot of other projects that I'm working on, like a super secret NFT game that I can't talk about, but it's probably I like to think it's going to be the biggest thing in crypto, and it's going to be more popular and more valuable than Bitcoin, probably on day 1 or 2.
All right.
And because it's very unique, and I've dropped a whole lot of hints here. But if you really dig into it, you'll be able to figure out my cryptic riddle that I've just said.
Okay. I'll sit down. I'll listen to it.
I can't say more without giving it away.
That's great. That's wonderful. No, I'm excited for you. So there is an item on your LinkedIn. I don't know if you want to talk about it or not, but I find interesting, and which is your Liberland association.
Liberland. Yes. So Liberland is the first country built entirely on the blockchain. And when I say the blockchain, I should really just say a blockchain, because there are companies, and even the government of Estonia has built services on their blockchain. Liberland is built entirely on chain. So the justice system is a series of smart contracts that there may be a judge here or there, but it's almost all going to be recorded on a decentralized exchange system. And like the Constitution is on the blockchain. Voting will take place on the blockchain. And Liberland, we're developing our own blockchain, the Liberland Merit blockchain. The Merit is the national currency, but we'll accept any currency. And the merit is mainly used to verify citizenship. Once you have 5,000 merits, you stake them, and that gives you the ability to vote as a citizen of Liberland. We're making really good progress on that. I came into that in 2018. I was working on another startup, and I was doing networking for that, and happened to run into one of their representatives in the US through my network as I was trying to build my network for that company. and they needed someone to help them out with a bunch of things that I just happen to have specialized expertise in because I got my career start in Washington, D.C. So I'm familiar with the region. I worked in nonprofit fundraising and finance and operations and doing a bunch of policy research and stuff. So I was familiar with a whole lot of the ins and outs of how the nonprofit sector worked. And they had nobody with that expertise. So they needed someone to help spin up a 501c3 to help them do humanitarian efforts across the world. I also had a fair amount of experience with international like shipping and import, export, stuff like that for other ventures that I've done in the past. And so I got all that set up for them, and we've been making some pretty good efforts on that. That's the Liberland Aid Foundation, is that nonprofit. That our most recent thing was we went down to El Salvador and donated a bunch of Bitcoin to the Children's Hospital there, which I learned is the only children's hospital in that whole part of Central America, like not only just in El Salvador, but Guatemala, Honduras, and Nicaragua too, in the surrounding area. It's basically the only one. Wow. And families from those other countries, if they have issues with their children, they have to go to San Salvador in order to go to that children's hospital. It's woefully underfunded. So the money that we were able to donate helped them substantially. And I do a lot of the public-private partnership stuff for Liberland. And just yesterday, they said they wanted to put me on the cabinet, but I don't want to be on the cabinet of Liberland right now because I've got a lot of other projects that I'm currently working on. I can't take on that much more responsibility. But it's, yeah, I'm really, a lot of people have different opinions of Liberland, but I think that it's a really fascinating project that has provided a lot of good in the world and is being a solid use case for blockchain. It is a real country. It's got land. It's not like, not to talk bad about micronations, but like Asgardia, as some of these other micronations, they just kind of exist in digital space with some nominal thing. I think Asgardia's claim is that they have a satellite, and that's their country.
This is between, is it the one between Croatia and Serbia?
Yes.
Like 7 kilometers?
Yeah.
Okay. It's sort of in this disputed territory kind of a thing.
Yeah, so that's basically how Liberland was born, because neither Serbia nor Croatia, the ones on either side of Liberland, want the territory.
How come?
It's a border dispute that harkens back to Yugoslavia.
That's usually the dispute is I want the land. In this case, it's
usually
funny.
Yeah.
Right.
So it boils down to, during the time of Yugoslavia, the Soviets changed the course of the Danube River. And when they broke up, the border dispute was, do we follow the current Danube River or the previous Danube River? Oh. So this one plot of land where Liberland is, nobody wants it because if they claim it, they give up a whole bunch more territory. Oh. So like Serbia says this belongs to, or Croatia says it's Serbian, and Serbia says it's not Serbian. So Serbia is like, no, this is not our territory. Croatia insists that it is Serbian territory because they need it to be Serbian territory in order to lay claim to a whole bunch of property on the Serbian side of the Danube River.
Of course. Okay, makes sense.
Serbia doesn't want it because then they lose that property.
Okay, and so therefore, what's the name of the president? Some young.
Jalika.
Right, and so he's the one who's the president of it, so to speak, right?
Yep. Not so to speak. He is the current president of Liberland, and I don't know if he's going to get voted out. Probably not, but we'll see.
Drama, wonderful.
I'm not sure if anyone's running against him, so I don't know.
Listen,
still building the voting system.
I would love to find out more about that. I'm setting up a session about like crazy stuff in technology. Crazy meaning something that is probably going to become mainstream at some point, but now sounds very strange, right? This would fit within that panel. I would love to invite you to talk about that.
I could spend like hours just talking about both the tech and the social aspects of Liberland. So
no, it's amazing, right? That and so do you see it having a role in this metaverse thing that's emerging, like plots of land and people? And
we have, if you're familiar with the Somnium Space metaverse, we have an embassy there.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So this is just blowing my mind. I'm sure the audience's mind up completely. I'll tell you what, I learned a lot, Steve.
I aim to educate.
And I think I'm just scratching the surface. I think NFTs is like, I remember you probably were not born when the internet was born, but way back when the internet was emerging, I remember a lot of confusion, right? Because the concepts were not there. And also a lot of confusions because there was a focus on like technology too much, the pipes, right? So
Yeah.
you don't need to explain the pipes to explain the internet, right?
Correct.
Right. All of that is,
that's another, yeah, that's a whole nother can of
right.
worms. And I got another project that's currently on hold, but it's a payment. It's back to the original basis of blockchain, which is payment processing. But you don't need for people to understand all the ins and outs of how blockchain works in order for it to serve as a payment layer. Just like how many, I don't know, but you probably don't know, and I'm sure none of your listeners probably know. Maybe you'll find some. Who knows how, when you put a credit card into a credit card reader, do you know all the ins and outs about how it reads that magnetic strip or that security chip and transmits the information across the internet? No, I know it uses the internet. I know that there is a payment protocol in there. I don't know how it works. I don't need to know how it works. Now, I know how blockchain works because that's something that I'm specifically involved in, but I don't know how the payment protocol for credit cards works. I just don't need to.
Exactly. Well, I mean, in tech, the first people who can explain it are people who have built it, and these are engineers, and engineers are really bad at explaining things because they go too deep into stuff, and so it takes a while for the folks to understand it, sort of package it, understand how to explain what, and so I think that's what I'm trying to do here. You do it very well. I mean, you understand the backhand, and you're explaining it very cleanly to folks, so that we don't have to know more than what we need to know, right? To be able to.
I like to credit that to my time in DC, because I had to do a whole bunch of wonky policy research and quantitative analysis of all of these, like the effects of all of these policies in every state, and then compile it all into these authoritative reports that a legislator with no knowledge of any policy or tech, legislators aren't the brightest, most technical.
Well, I mean, if you can,
I had to explain it all to them.
If you can explain it to a politician, then I mean, that's it. You're done, right? You can explain it to anybody on Earth.
If you can explain it to a politician, anybody
right?
can understand.
I'm like, oh, I understand. Okay, well, there you go. Everybody can understand it now. Wonderful, Steve. Thank you so much for spending the hour plus.
Thanks for having me.
For being generous. I think there's a conversation to be had offline between what we're doing. Hopefully I'll be able to, because I think what you're doing is really important, right? Especially for, it's in the ethos of it, right? The ethos of not just the successful people are going to once again exploit the system to become even more successful, right? The whole ethos is democratization, right? Enabling folks to have a fair shake at it's monetizing their talent and so forth. And I think that's exactly what you guys are trying to do there. I'm sure you'll be successful in doing that.
If we're not careful, then we're going to see the same thing with blockchain that we've seen with other sectors of the economy. And I personally am very much against that. And we're trying to fix that.
No, that's exactly the problem that we need to avoid. Because, if you see that, I have this chart that I love, which shows how productivity, right, for the longest time was parallel, so to speak, like this in terms of compensation, right? Right. So you're being more productive.
I think I've seen this chart,
right, and then it goes like this.
It levels off.
It's criminal, right? The productivity continues like this, and here the leveling off, so that this delta here. Imagine if it was like this, right? The wealth out there, people being able to spend money, but now that money is just bubbling up to the top, to the top of the top of the top, right?
I refuse to believe it's because workers are just lazy. There are lazy people out there. We all see them. We all work with them, and we hate them.
But they are the minority.
Most people aren't that way. Yeah.
No, the vast majority are exactly. They actually deserve all the good stuff they're doing. And the system is such that, and I share your concern, right? Hopefully, crypto is not going to replicate this this thing that is at the core of a lot of the ills that we see, right? A lot of political turmoil is because of that, right? So the consequences are real. Be that as it may.
I'm also going to say one little thing here that that exact thing that we're discussing right now is one reason why I am a major supporter of proof of work rather than proof of stake. I have to get into a whole technical explanation as to how that ties together with that specific argument. But yeah, like if we go with proof of stake on the argument that it's more environmentally friendly, we're gonna hate it in the long run, and it's gonna kill crypto because we're gonna end up in the same situation where the people that have the most are controlling the system, and that I don't buy the arguments in favor of proof of stake. That's just my warning.
No, that's fair. That's fair. Wonderful. Okay. I think you and I are going to be talking quite a bit, offline. And again, I'm preparing this session. Hopefully you'll be able to join, because what you're doing is it Liberland? How do I say it again?
Yep. Everybody pronounces it different. Some people say Liberland, some people say Liberland, some people say Liberland. Like
Liberland.
However you pronounce it, just as long as you get the land in there and the Lee at the beginning.
We'll see enough. Liberland, what you do there is also fascinating. I think it's that's a harbinger of the future. There's a lot of interesting stuff that's happening. And
startup nations.
Yeah, exactly. Startup nations. Okay, you're opening up another can of worms, but so we'll.
Yep. I got a lot of cans. I got a lot of cans over here that I can open up. All these worms.
No, I love that. I'm like you. I have 1,500 ideas, and my challenge is to focus.
Oh yeah, it's a major problem.
Focus.
I can't keep taking on more projects. Like I'm gonna trim some out.
Trim. It's the sort of we get, and I don't know how I got myself in these situations. I'm sure, like, wait a minute, why am I involved in 10 projects? How did I get here, right? And then you spend a lot of time sort of undoing or saying, okay, I got to do this later on. Steve, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
We'll talk again.
All right.
Take care.
You too.